Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Draw Control podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by sophomore on the Stanford women's lacrosse team, Annabel Frist. Annabel, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And how's everything going?
It's good. I'm happy to join. I'm currently living in New York right now, so it's a good break from, I guess, the work that I'm doing, which is
Nice.
nice.
What's New York like during the summertime? How different is it compared to the West Coast?
Honestly, I'm enjoying it. I'm just living with my sister this summer, which is fun. She just graduated college. So it's kind of fun to be back with her. I really like the job I'm doing this summer. And it's totally in person, which I'm actually enjoying because I've met a lot of cool people. There's like 14 other interns, so small enough to get to know people, but big enough to where I like gotten to meet some fun personalities too. So it's good, but we've had some weird weather, like with the smoke the other day. So
Yeah.
definitely not California weather, but I'm kind of East Coast, so I'm kind of used to it.
Yeah. And other than that, any other summer plans outside of lacrosse that you're looking forward to before you head back to school?
Not really. I'm here through kind of mid-August and then we get brought back early for lacrosse. So kind of just 2 weeks at home with my family in Nashville and that's about it. But I have a ton of friends in the city this summer. So it's still a lot of fun.
Now, in regards to your training for the upcoming season, what do you hope to work on and how are you going about doing that, working a job on the side?
Yeah, so I'm one of the lucky people who has the hard 9 to 5. They don't want to pay us overtime, so they basically force us out of the office whenever we go over the 40 hours. So I actually have time to like work out. I found a good gym near my apartment. And then I've got teammates who are from Long Island or any other in the city. So kind of finding times to like go on runs with them or find just like different gyms to work out in, maybe even like a field to play some lacrosse. So just kind of here and there, uh, finding small times to kind of train, I guess.
Now, what's something what I guess in your perspective, what's the biggest thing you think you have to work on for next season?
Something that I want to work on. Uh, there's conversation about me possibly going back to midfield from attack. So I think definitely focusing on my conditioning, which is like probably one of my least favorite things, but just making sure when I come back in the fall, being in shape. And also like stick skills. I was late to the game, so I feel like stick skills for me has always been something that I can continue to work on, even though it's so basic. Uh, pretty sure I scored my first lefty goal at some point this year. So
Hmm.
definitely developing my left hand would probably help me out a bit.
Is there a difference? Like, I guess, is there a transition in how do you sort of, I guess, adjust the transition in style of play from attacker to midfield?
Um, I mean, I played midfield in high school. Like, I think I'm kind of your typical midfielder in a sense. Like when I started playing, I wasn't like I was really good at either. I came from a background in basketball, so a lot of those skills were transferable to lacrosse. Um, but I think like midway through freshman year, when I was switched to attack, like I loved it because then I could really hone in on those skills and like develop at a faster pace than kind of getting half the reps you get as a midfielder. So I really enjoyed that. And I feel like it set me up well for the past 2 seasons. So going back to midfield, just knowing that I will get less reps on attack and then also have to learn a totally new defense and even just get back into those like motions and um like you're not on the field the whole time anymore, and like knowing when to come off because you're hurting your team because you're tired or just even getting used to who's on my line, whoever that might be. So just small stuff like that. But yeah.
Well, I sort of want to transition now and talk about the beginning of your lacrosse career and sort of work all the way up to where you are today. So you're from Nashville. Talk about growing up there and how did you start playing lacrosse?
Yeah, so as many people know, lacrosse isn't very big in the South. So growing up, I knew nothing about the sport. And like I said, I grew up playing like pretty high level basketball. So did that all the way through high school, but freshman year, we had a tough basketball season, and not only like did we not like kind of get where we wanted to, but also my experience with like the team culture and leadership wasn't what I wanted it to be. And so it kind of ended on a sour note, and lacrosse season was about to start. And my sister plays on the team, and my cousin and a lot of my other friends. So they're like, we need girls. Like, come on, just play. We'll throw you on defense. You don't have to do much. And ironically, even though we were in Nashville, my three high school coaches were like all stars at UNC. Corey Donahoe is my head coach, and she was like, I'm pretty sure the all-time like point leader until maybe last year. So when she saw the opportunity that I might switch to lacrosse, she took it, and like first week I was miserable. Like I hated it. It was pouring rain. It was cold. I was so bad at it. But I stuck it out, and I think having all those girls on the team and like going from such a bad culture to such a great culture in such a short amount of time was like such a sense of relief. And as somebody who'd been playing the sport basketball for so long, it was like almost a challenge and exciting to learn something new and kind of get better at a rate that like made me want to keep trying, but also like face times when I was like, oh, I can't do this, and want to keep doing it all the time. So that's kind of how I started. And it was honestly just a lot of fun.
Well, did you watch any lacrosse growing up? And if so, who are some of your favorite players and teams that you admired?
I didn't watch any lacrosse like at all. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know the players. I didn't know which teams like what the teams were. When I was on defense in high school, I would like often get like a knockdown or something because lacrosse national again, it's so bad. Like you could probably do it with your eye closed at that time. So I'd get a knockdown and I would run it down to the opposite restrainer. And I thought that you weren't allowed to cross the restraining line. Like I thought it was like you could never do that. So I would full stop on the restrainer and just stand there and like look around. And people would be like, pass the ball, because nobody wanted it in my stick. So I would just wait and then like shovel pass it to them and then let them go over. And that was kind of like it. But no, I didn't have anybody like to look up to at the time other than my coaches. Like they were so much fun. So they were young and like really just inspired me to like get into the sport. And so I credit a ton of that kind of initial excitement to them. And like shout out to this girl named Elizabeth Farnsworth. She played at this school called Hutchinson in Memphis. She was so good. She was like committed to BC and then switched to UVA, and she was like the best lacrosse player in our area. And I remember my first game against them, I was like, oh, this girl, she is very good. And I'm like, it
Mhm.
would be very cool to be that good. So I guess she's somebody I looked up to at that time.
Well, before college, you played for St. Stephen's and St. Agnes and Ensworth. Talk about your cross experiences with both of those teams and what you took away from it.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, lacrosse wasn't very competitive in Nashville, and like having COVID hit my junior year, I only got like um 2 seasons with Ensworth, both of which were great. I think like freshman summer, I kind of got into lacrosse a bit. I can like talk about that a little bit later on, but it was a very non-traditional route that summer. And then sophomore year, did some camps in the fall, was excited, did well that spring. And then junior year was probably going to be the season where I'm like, okay, like I'm probably like I'm going to be able to develop and do well. And then and then COVID hit. So I decided that it would be interesting to do a year in like a very competitive lacrosse region. And so I kind of looked at some boarding school options, some day school options. I really liked the DC area and I was kind of familiar with it. So I ended up choosing St. Stephen, St. Agnes. And I also had a teammate who was there. So it'd be nice to have her going into college. And so I lived with another family my senior year. I never met them. They have an older son who played lacrosse at Amherst, and then twins my age, a guy and a girl. And I was kind of their triplet for the year. And it went as well as it probably could have. Like they were fantastic. And like, yes, lacrosse was a huge part of the reason I went to St. Stephen's, but um, it wasn't my whole experience. Like just being away for a year and being surrounded by a lot of like other friends who had similar like goals and just kind of like daily routines was refreshing and really helpful in my transition to college. So yeah, that was kind of like, I mean, obviously St. Stephen's was, we were in the DMV, which is like hotbed of lacrosse, second to maybe like Baltimore and Long Island. And so playing for them and under Kathy Jenkins, who's like probably one of the most legendary coaches out there, was like a really like rewarding experience. And I learned more in a year than I like could imagine. So it was awesome.
Now, what's the best memory you have from your high school lacrosse days? I'm assuming I saw that you won a state championship back in 2019. Was it that, or was there something else that you sort of sticks out to you when you look back on it now?
Yeah, winning in 2019 was fun. I was like, again, I got to do it with all my friends, and it was exciting for the school because it was kind of like we were just now kind of really growing the game. But I think a lot of my best memories came from like St. Stephen, St. Agnes, and like playing in big time games and like being with those girls. And um, I think our last game of the season might have been one of my favorites. We played Stone Ridge and we had lost them earlier in the season in like overtime, I think, or maybe by one goal. And we weren't expected to win this game. And it was at home, last game of our careers, and we ended up winning. And it wasn't even like a state championship. Like it was after our state championship, which was funny. It was like just a total rivalry game, and we ended up winning. So that was probably one of my great memories.
Now, how did your high school lacrosse experience help prepare you for college with Stanford? Obviously, like you mentioned, you sort of, it's as you went along in your high school career, you sort of got more into the sport and more serious about it. So just talk a little about that and just how it was preparing you for your eventual recruiting process, then obviously your eventual transition to Stanford.
Yeah, so again, like so much credit goes to my coaches at Ensworth and my teammates for like encouraging me to get into the sport originally, and especially to Corey Donahoe, who like um, spent so much time with me on one to get better, whether it was like late nights or like rainy days. And she fostered relationships between me and also like connections she had at schools to like encourage me to go to camps or whatever. And then when I decided to go to St. Stephen's, having Kathy Jenkins, but also just like the network of people in the lacrosse world there. And we would like even train, we went to this gym called Healthy Baller, and like every lacrosse kid goes there. So like we would go every day, almost every day before school, like at like 6 a.m. And like those trainers were just the best. Like they made me want to wake up. They made me want to go. And it was like social hour. And then after that, going to practice and being under Kathy Jenkins, who's been doing this for years, she's taught me so much about the game that I didn't know. Like I think, like I said, a lot was transferable from basketball, and that part came naturally. But like kind of understanding the IQ and like the technical side of lacrosse, she was really helpful at that. And again, like fostering relationships between me and other people in the area who were great resources, whether it was like one-on-one training or footwork or lifting. So I think that was a lot of what made my experience so great. And then again, playing with some of the best players in the country every day. We had like 17 college commits in my senior class
It's
alone,
crazy. Yeah.
which was crazy. It was like I don't think we've had more than like five total come from the state of Tennessee.
Hmm.
So just playing with high level players like that prepares you better than anything, just being out there. So yeah.
And you also played club lacrosse for the Ultimate PA Blue. I want to ask you what that experience was like playing club lacrosse and what you took away from that.
Yeah, I was the definition of what people would call a club hopper, which I didn't realize it was so like taboo, I guess. But coming from Nashville, you have to be creative. So I played for a lot of different club teams. I would do like maybe one or two tournaments with someone, another two with another team, and just kind of finding where I can go. And but I feel like I would totally consider Ultimate PA as like my like um main club team. Like that's where most of my recruiting came from. And my teammates there were awesome. Like Rachel Clark was one of my close friends on the team, and she's crushing it at UVA. And my coach there, like she would get on us too. But it was just the perfect amount of like being like, you can't be messing around, but also like really encouraging us to do well, even if it's just like a showcase tournament. And also the head of that club, Michelle DeJulis, she was also a legend in her time in lacrosse, and she was incredibly valuable to me as a resource, connecting with like coaches or just getting me a spot on that team, encouraging me to try out. So I really I had a great experience with Ultimate, even if it required a lot of travel back and forth.
Now, talk about your recruiting process with Stanford and what made you want to go there versus other schools you might have looked at.
Yeah, so I feel like most of like, I don't know, high school, I had a set idea of kind of like a group of schools I wanted to go to. Um, I started to experience burnout in basketball, so for a time I didn't think I wanted to play college sport. And during that recruiting process for basketball, I just remember being like having this pit in my stomach, being like, I really can't imagine doing this for 4 years. So I kind of just stopped and like was like, I don't, I think I'm just gonna go to school without a sport. And so I took courses that would position me to have an opportunity to go to a school in kind of that group that I wanted. Um, and like kind of just modeled what my sister did and went as is. But when I started playing lacrosse and when I started getting in a place where I could get recruited by some of the top programs, it opened kind of more doors in the sense that like I was now kind of thinking more of like, do I want an experience that's more academic focused or more athletic focused? Or like again, best combination of both. And when Stanford came about, I felt like it was that combination of both in a lot of ways. And when it came down to the final decision, I think I really was excited at kind of the prospect of where will Stanford be in like 3 years. Like obviously you can commit to a school like UNC, Northwestern, where it's very much plug and chug. Like you're put into a system and it's likely guaranteed you will get better and you will experience those wins. But there's also something to be said about the experience of taking a risk and like going somewhere where you might not experience that success right away. You might experience right away, or you might not experience it at all. You don't know, and it's frustrating, but it's also like when you do get those wins, it's exciting and you feel part of something bigger. Um, so that was kind of the reasons I chose Stanford, and I was lucky enough to have a really great recruiting class. So seeing some of those girls commit before me made me excited because I feel like a lot about what you should choose when choosing school is think about the people in the place because you can't choose a school for coaches. Like it changes all the time, and um, as long as you love the place and love the people around you, like you'll find success whether it's in lacrosse or in school, and you'll get better, both as a person, teammate, friend, etc. So yeah.
What was like the biggest adjustment you had to make to college lacrosse? Was it the speed of the game, physicality, less time and space? What was something that stood out to you the most?
Um, Biggest adjustment. For me, like uh I would say I feel like there's like the obvious answers of like just the speed of the game, the physicality, whatever. But for me, the biggest adjustment was the recovery and travel combination. Like at Stanford, we have to fly to most of our games. And I will admit I'm not the best about like ice bathing or recovering or drinking enough water. And I underestimated how much that can impact your performance. And like even when we go to like high altitudes, like in Colorado, or go somewhere where like extreme heat, like Arizona, like getting into a routine where like I'm preparing myself pre-game, but also recovering post-game on a doubleheader weekend, Friday, Sunday, has been the biggest adjustment. And also like getting enough sleep and having to do homework on the planes and stay up late or take a midterm on the road. Like that's definitely a huge part of your athletic experience, even if it might not be on the field. So that's been my biggest adjustment.
And I was going to ask this question later, but I'll ask it now. How did you sort of learn to balance both academics and lacrosse at such a high level, at such a rigorous university like Stanford?
Yeah, so kind of going back to what I mentioned earlier about like high school, I think I took a really challenging course load, one that like looking back, I'm like, was that really worth it? But I mean, like the high school I went to, I mean, you're going from you're there from like 8 to 3, and then you have practice in the afternoon. So like already you're managing a pretty challenging, tiring schedule. Um, so coming to Stanford, I almost felt like freshman year it was easier. Like now I have more time. It's just about being productive in that time and like choosing what to do when. Um, Obviously practices are longer lifts, like, and you have to like schedule classes around those. So logistically it might be more challenging because you're given just enough more freedom where sometimes you make the wrong choices what to do at that time, especially in California when you have a beach an hour away and snow 2, 3 hours away. Um, but I think this year, when kind of getting more into my heavier course load, like I'm gonna be honest, like it is a really challenging. But when you're on a team where everybody has that experience, it holds you accountable and like you want to be working because if you look over on a plane and everybody's doing work, you're gonna feel like you got to do work too, but not in like a weird competitive sense, just in like a reality check. You have a paper due tomorrow, so it's been hard, but I feel like that's kind of the expectation. And coming in, that's going to be something you have to learn to balance.
Now you play in the Pac-12. I want to ask you what's it like being a part of that conference, just the competition you face each game. Obviously, it's a lot of travel, but I feel like you guys play good teams all the time. So what's it like being a part of that?
Yeah, the Pac-12, I think it's like fun. We get to go to really cool places, and though it's a flight, at least it's not like a 5 hour drive.
Hmm.
And a lot of our most fun times happen sometimes like just in the airport or going out to dinner. This year we had less like COVID restrictions, so we were able to like go out and eat, which was fun. But anyways, yeah, Pac-12, it's it's fun, but it's also like sometimes the there's such a dramatic difference sometimes between your games, and like your schedule is weird because you play everybody twice. So like this year we played ASU USC the same weekend, and then the next weekend we played them again. So that's not happening in any other conference. And then you get to Pac-12s and you play a team again. So sometimes you have to beat a team 3 times, which is never easy. So that's interesting. And then also our coach does a good job of scheduling out of conference games that are like very challenging. Like we've gone to play Stony Brook, we've gone to play Northwestern, Syracuse. Um, we even had a fall scrimmage against BC. So like having those games uh are again reality checks because you can't go from playing a Pac-12 team one weekend and maybe have success there, and then you can't use the same skills or tactics you use there to go play maybe a Northwestern. So it's hard because of that inconsistency piece a little bit. But that's why every day we're told to practice. Sometimes your best competition is going to be yourself, and if you want to win, you have to know that. And like when you go out and you play a team from the East Coast and you lose, it's like this is what it takes. And when you get to the tournament, like that's what you should expect.
Yeah, I kind of like how you have to sort of learn how to beat a team 3 times just because it's so hard to do. And winning a tournament game is very hard to do. So I feel like maybe sort of that experience of trying to beat someone 3 times and learning different ways how to do that definitely prepares you for the tournament. And it where a lot of those other conference teams don't really have that sort of experience. So maybe they become less prepared from that aspect of things.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, your freshman year, your team won the Pac-12. Talk about winning that championship and what it meant to you that year.
Winning the Pac-12 was really fun. I I think I loved it for a lot of reasons, but one was I was actually roommates for 2 weeks with one of our fifth years, Ali Bayako, and she like I totally looked up to her. She was so much fun and so cool. So being her roommate for the whole week, I was like, I feel like I've already won. Like it's we were already having a great time. Um, and then in the actual game or games that weekend, I think we came out like with a level of kind of like excitement that was higher than before, because we had had a really bad experience earlier that season at ASU specifically, where like half our team was out with the flu. We experienced injuries in the game. One of our attackers ended up on defense for a possession. It was just a total like mess. And we didn't want to end with that kind of taste in our mouth. So when we went back to ASU, we had a plan, and it was really fun to execute, and celebrate with each other and celebrate those seniors and those fifth years, because we all wanted to play for them. And I think that was what was most important.
Now, your team lost your first ever tournament game to Jacksonville that year. What'd you learn and take away from that game, even though your team lost?
Yeah, that was a terrible game, just to be frank.
Hmm.
But like, I think after the game, when I was thinking about it, like, obviously I was very frustrated and disappointed, but like Jacksonville came to play. Like, all respect, and they they deserve to win. They came out with like so much energy. I just remember in warm-ups being like, yeah, like they're here to play. And we came from a 5 a.m. flight on Tuesday, took like a whole day to just get our feet under us, and then we're adjusting to the heat. We just weren't prepared as we should have been. And flying cross country again like doesn't help that. But to come and get beaten so badly was that like punch in the face of like, this is what it's like at a higher level. And like, it sucks that it takes a whole season sometimes to get that reality check. Um, but when we got it, I think it let like the younger girls had this moment of like, if we want to have success in the next 3 years, like we have to start doing some things differently. Both with culture, with leadership, and just with skills. Like at the end of the day, you can talk about motivation and energy all you want, but like sometimes it comes down to like skills, like who played better that day, and who's better preparing themselves and practicing all year. So yeah, it was a punch in the face.
Now, individually, what would you say was the biggest improvement that you made to your game from your freshman year to your sophomore year this past season?
Um, I think last season, like freshman year, most of my success came in tight, like from feeds. Um, I I was able to really capitalize on catching and finishing. Whereas this year, I started to take outside shots, and like obviously the game is changing. You see like Charlotte North, who's shooting the ball like way outside the 8. Izzy Skane shooting it from the 12. And I think it might have been Stony Brook was the game. We again we were losing with little time left, and we were just told, if you get the ball, shoot. So I got the ball, and I was like maybe just outside the 8, and I just shot it, and it went in, and I was like, that was kind of fun. Like that was pretty good. So I was like, I'm gonna keep trying it, and I was able to find opportunities in games the rest of the season where I could take that shot, or at least pump for shooting space. And a lot of our offense is created through like drawing the defense out. We do very much box style lacrosse, which requires a lot of finesse and patience inside. But if you don't pull a defense out, you're not going to create the space for that to work. So I think becoming more of a threat outside, and whether that's pumping and then dodging or just letting it fly, is something that I improved this year and want to continue to work on.
Now, talk about your sophomore year and just what you took away from the season. Obviously, it wasn't the season that your team hoped, but I do think there were some positive things to take away from it because you had some really close games against really good teams. So, just from your perspective, what would you take away from your team's performance this past season?
I think this season was I think I don't want to say a learning season, because like we did learn a lot, but we faced, I think, more setbacks than success. And at the beginning of the year, we came in with like a lot of optimism, and we were like, this is going to be our year. But I think we faced one too many punches in the sense that like it was hard to recover from those. And we lost some confidence that I think we needed in specific moments that might have really given us that momentum, whether it was like the Stony Brook game or even the first game against UVA. Like there were times where we had leads that we ended up giving up. And like that was tough on our confidence and like our ability to go out the next week and believe that we can go beat a higher team. I also think losing like 7 people last year, we lost obviously our whole senior class graduated and we didn't have any fifth year say. And then we lost Allie B and Galen and our fifth year. So it totally felt like a new team this year, which was refreshing, but also meant like people had to step up in ways that I think were unexpected. And there's a learning curve to that. And I think it took some time. And again, it just didn't line up when we needed to capitalize. So yes, not the season we wanted, but I think we learned some things that we can really harness next year and capitalize on.
Yeah, and talk about your team's goals and expectations for next season. I was looking through your recruiting class, really, so a lot of high-end players coming to the team next year. So what do you hope to accomplish and just sort of your team's goals and expectations? Obviously, it's to win a national championship, but outside of that, any other goals on your team's radar that, fans might not be aware of?
Yeah, I think every year we always like, obviously everyone wants to win a national championship, but at the end of the day, every other team loses, like there's only one team that wins. So having goals way before that is important. And so one of those is obviously win Pac-12s. And I think we are totally capable of doing that. I think a goal for next year that we could have as a team is like identify those games early on that are going to be kind of your must wins and like go win them, like it's easier said than done, but like I think it's not just the night or 2 days before the game that you have to prepare. Like we have to go into the week before and in that week prepping for those games and like knowing what we need to do and like adapting to those and making those adjustments that maybe we didn't make this year. So my goal is to win one of those like big out of conference games and like kind of make a statement. So yeah.
So we're now in a segment I like to call five questions that have nothing to do with lacrosse. And the goal of the segment is to hopefully get to know you a little bit more off the field, as well as some of your teammates. So the first one is, if there was a movie made about your life, who would you want to play yourself?
Movie about my life. Who would I mean, I want to preface this with I don't think I match this character at all, but personally I love Jennifer Aniston and like
Mm-hmm.
I think she is like so great. So I want her to play my life, but in no way do I think I'm anything like Jennifer Aniston, but I feel like she would do a good job. Um, Other than that, I'm like I don't know. I might have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I don't know who would play me. I gotta think about that too. Probably like I think Tom Cruise would be pretty cool, just because
Yeah.
he's in all those cool action movies. So, and I could brag to people that Tom Cruise played me in a movie. So that's probably what I would go with.
Yeah.
What's your go-to karaoke song?
Go to karaoke. Probably Ain't No Mountain High Enough.
That's a good one.
Yeah, me and my roommate, uh, our freshman year, it was like recruits were on campus for the weekend, and we thought a funny selling point would be if we just started singing karaoke in town. There was this girl who was set up like during COVID, all the roads are closed.
Yeah.
So the main road in town was closed, and there's tables in the road for dinners for different restaurants, and she was just singing, and we paid her $10 to let us take over the mic for one song, and we sang Ain't No Mountain High Enough, and it was honestly pretty funny. And I think almost all of those girls committed, so clearly it may have worked. But I'm an awful singer, so I hope or I hope no one has to hear me sing that song.
Do you have a video of it? I'm assuming you do.
I'm sure most of my friends do and will hold it against me, but Yeah, no, I can't say I have any videos of myself singing.
Now next non-lacrosse question is what is the most underrated holiday and what's the most overrated holiday?
Underrated holiday.
I can give you my
Um,
answers if you want to think about it.
okay, yeah, let me hear your answers.
My underrated holiday is Christmas Eve, just because obviously Christmas is awesome, but I feel like people sort of underrate how good Christmas Eve is as well, just because the hype around Christmas is super fun. And I don't know, I just something about it that I really like. And then my most overrated would probably be Halloween, just because I'm not really into dressing up. And I feel like once you become an adult, it's not as fun as it used to be.
All right. I feel like Christmas Eve isn't that underrated though, but there's only so many holidays to choose from. Um, Underrated holiday. I would say, uh, all right, I'll start with overrated. Um, I don't love Valentine's Day. Like I
Hmm.
just like I don't need to see everybody's like relationship on Instagram and or just like you'll get both extremes of like the like really low key but also kind of in your face and then also the paragraphs and I think I can laugh at a lot of it but also I'm like this is I don't know, it's a little much. But it's also exciting because sometimes you realize like you had no idea two people were dating, or the couple that was supposed to get married in eighth grade is no longer together.
Hmm.
So it has pros and cons. I guess most underrated holiday would be um it's not underrated, but I'll just say I love Thanksgiving. Like it
Yeah.
is it's so much fun and I love being with my family and like I maybe I won't run the turkey trot, but I'll sit out there with like I don't know some by a fire or
Hmm.
passing out water